We simply can't love all TV characters, and sometimes that's absolutely the point. But that being said, some of the most widely despised characters on our TV screens really aren't deserving of all that bile, no matter that the internet might tell you otherwise. Inspired by yet another fascinating recent Reddit thread on the matter, these 10 TV characters are so pervasively hated by fans for a number of reasons, none of which are really entirely reasonable. Are these characters faultless saints? Absolutely not. But going by the volcanic reactions to their mere presence in the fandom, you'd assume they've all done something truly horrific, more terrible even than the actual villain of the show themselves. So with that in mind, I'm Gareth from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 TV characters that did not deserve the hate. Number 10, Janice Lippman-Guralnick, Friends. Perhaps the single most iconic recurring character in Friends is Janice Lippman-Guralnick, Chandler's on-again, off-again girlfriend, best remembered for her nasal voice, New York accent, and loud, obnoxious laugh. No, I'm not doing the laugh. This isn't to say that Janice isn't grating, because she's clearly the definition of a small doses person, but there's also a prevailing underlayer of sadness to her appearances throughout the show that's basically glossed over. Janice genuinely likes the central friends, while being basically oblivious to how utterly unbearable they find her, and as a result, many of their actions towards her come off as needlessly snide and mean-spirited. Janice is certainly no saint in her own right, having, cheated on Chandler and all, but she was a fun, caring person who actually made one hell of an effort with Chandler's pals. Plus, she dropped a monumental truth bomb by calling Ross too whiny for her, which honestly alone negates any disdain she's apparently worthy of. Number 9, Mark Brendanawicz, Parks and Recreation. As much as Parks and Rec fans love basically the entire main ensemble, there are nevertheless nuclear levels of scorn reserved for Pawnee city planner Mark Brendanawicz, who bailed from the show after its second season. To this day, fans follow Leslie Knope's lead and dub him Mark Brendanawicz, and while he was definitely the least funny member of the core cast, he gets way too much of the blame for the show's first season being, well, a bit of a damp squib. In an office full of characters, Mark was a total normie, basically an audience insert straight guy to react to the absurdity unfolding around him. Mark never fully gelled with the show's other characters, but is still an all too convenient lightning rod for Park and Rec's substantial growing pains during its rather mediocre first season. As a character, he's hardly great, but does he deserve to be saddled with all the ire for how rough Parks and Rec was out of the gates? Absolutely not. Number 8, Shannon Rutherford, Lost. Without question, the most hated character in Lost's first season is Shannon Rutherford, a seemingly vapid, selfish, spoiled young woman who at the time of the show's airing was regularly compared to Paris Hilton. Yikes. Part of the problem is that just as Shannon began to enjoy greater character development and grow as a person, she ended up dead, being accidentally shot by Ana Lucia Cortez at the start of season 2. Following the death of her stepbrother Boone, Shannon was clearly beginning to become a stronger and less useless person. But before she could be fully realized as a team player on the island, she got capped out of nowhere. Though the Shannon hate has cooled somewhat in recent years, the true tragedy of her character really only fully unveils itself on a repeat viewing. Instead of bagging on Shannon until the end of time, direct your hatred somewhere it actually belongs. To Nikki and Paolo, for example. Number 7, Wesley Crusher, Star Trek The Next Generation. Star Trek The Next Generation certainly had some major growing pains in its first uneven season in particular, and one of the major fan gripes was the presence of young acting ensign Wesley Crusher. For many, Wesley was a stereotypical child genius character who they felt was cynically shoehorned into the series to make the show more appealing to children. The number of times he suddenly saved the day with his unique aptitude quickly left fans tired and irritated, such that they relished when Captain Picard gave him the iconic dressing down, "Shut up, Wesley!" And while the writing absolutely did the character no favors at all in the early going, enough to invite accusations he was a Gary Stew, he improved leaps and bounds in subsequent seasons when his presence was scaled back, and he basically became a regular member of the crew. Wil Wheaton's performance deserves a lot of the credit here, but for a generation of kids watching Trek, he was indeed an aspirational figure. Plucky, determined, and super smart. He doesn't give a great first impression, sure, but as the show found its own identity, so too did Wesley. As less of a Gene Roddenberry self-insert, and more a relatable, likable member of the Enterprise crew. Number 6, Lois Wilkerson, Malcolm in the Middle. If you grew up watching Malcolm in the Middle as a kid, you likely detested the family's perennially angry, ultra-strict mother, Louise, I can't say her name, who is framed as being a joyless foil to the kids and their father, Hal. This is perhaps best embodied by the infamous Family Guy skit where Hal is shown beating Lois to death in order to free the kids and himself. Despite the comedic intent, it reflects a very real attitude among viewers that Lois is a void of rage who wishes to suck up every last scrap of possible fun. In reality, Lois is a brutally overworked woman who simply doesn't get the support she needs from her husband while dealing with a troop of especially unruly sons. Lois is just the first of several mothers and wives on this list who are demonized by the fanbase for daring to call the heroic, typically male characters out on their BS. Revisiting the series today as an adult, it's clear that Lois loves her family and devotes so much of her time and energy to caring for them, no matter how rarely they seem to appreciate it. If she's too controlling of Malcolm's life in particular, it's only in reaction to the abject chaos that's unfolding around her. You really can't blame her, can you? Number 5, Betty Draper, Mad Men. Not that dissimilar to Lois is Mad Men's Betty Draper, who despite her once-husband Don's regular philandering, substance abuse, and generally pretty awful parenting, caught the brunt of fans' ire throughout the period drama's run. Betty is obviously written to be icy and standoffish to a point, but while many fans will simply write her off as childish and sulky, her demeanour is far more complex than simply being a bitchy foil to her whiskey-chugging hubby. It's important to consider Betty within the context of the time. A woman clearly depressed at her general lack of purpose outside of her place as a homemaker. She's not the best mother, but in her own way, she's a prisoner of her time, and very, very pissed off about it. She's certainly no worse than Don, whose bed hopping and general absenteeism is so regularly swept under the rug by his cheerleaders. By the end of Mad Men, with Betty's days numbered by lung cancer, there were those who still couldn't bring themselves to feel even a morsel of sympathy or basic pity for her. For shame. Number 4, James Hurley, Twin Peaks. Easily the most widely despised character in Twin Peaks is Laura Palmer's secret boyfriend James Hurley, a sulky biker who just can't seem to catch a damn break. James may be a sad sack, but he's certainly got enough reasons to justify it, given his fraught home life and seeing 2 of his romantic interests end up dead, as well as later suffering a traumatic injury in an accident. James will forever remain a figure of ridicule for fans because of his infamously toe-curling rendition of his song Just You. And while the writing for the character certainly got worse in the show's second season, he's really a pitch-perfect parody of the brooding teenager common in so many American soap operas. He's nobody's favourite Twin Peaks character, sure, but the hatred his mere name invokes would suggest he'd done something much worse than be a sensitive, good-hearted boy who dared to sing a terrible song. That's me most Saturday nights. Number 3, Lisa Kimmel, 6 Feet Under. 6 Feet Under's second season introduced Lisa Kimmel, Nate's old friend who becomes pregnant after they sleep together and later gives birth to their daughter, Maya. Lisa is then murdered at the end of season 3, and for many fans, their reaction was simply, yeah, good. Lisa is by far the most divisive character among the show's main cast, with many dismissing her as an excessively needy, insecure, high-maintenance hippie. But let's rewind a little and consider the facts, okay? Even accepting that Lisa is far more into Nate than he is into her, her paranoia over Nate still being in love with his ex Brenda was basically entirely justified given that, you know, it was demonstrably true. Sure, Lisa is at times a deeply difficult person, but is she really worthy of more derision than any of the show's flawed gallery of main characters? Nate isn't exactly a saint, far from it in fact, and yet seems to get far more leeway from the fanbase. Some food for thought, Lisa brings out the hate in so many people because she holds up a mirror to the most anxious and insecure parts of ourselves that we don't want to think about. Boom, mic drop, moving on. Number 2, Skyler White, Breaking Bad. There's surely no more overhated character in the history of TV than Breaking Bad's Skyler White, who was so thoroughly demonized by the show's predominantly male fans for basically serving as an obstacle to her husband Walt's drug kingpin aspirations. What a horrible person. Despite acting in a generally reasonable manner, relatively speaking at least, Skyler was routinely mocked by fans as a wet blanket for simply wanting her husband to, you know, not make meth for a living. It's undeniable that much of the Skyler hate was couched in a general brand of sexism. That the severe, upset woman wasn't letting our hero be a badass and build his empire. That fans so conveniently brushed over Walt's horrendousness while focusing their ire on Skyler is frankly ridiculous. Something that even the show's creator Vince Gilligan called troubling. The vitriol became so volcanic that some ill-intentioned fans even sent threats of harm to actress Anna Gunn, who consequently feared for her safety, or for playing a character who didn't want the bad guy to do bad things. Skyler was pretty flawed in her own right, but that she's ultimately loathed by orders of magnitude more than any of the show's real villains is outrageous. If you hate Skyler, you're basically telling on yourself. Yeah, don't be that person. Number 1, Toby Flenderson, The US Office. In the case of Toby Flenderson from the US version of The Office, the fanbase was effectively manipulated into hating the straight-laced HR rep because Michael Scott did. But really, Toby's only crime is that he's boring. That is to say, in an office full of cartoon characters, he's probably the most real and tragically relatable person. Toby's just trying to get through the day without administrative headaches that will make his job harder, and Michael's obnoxious hijinks present an obvious obstacle to this. Sure, Toby wasn't perfect. Touching Pam's knee wasn't a good look, but he didn't deserve to be the office punching bag. Considering his fraught family life defined by a divorce and shared custody of his young daughter, fans should have been considerably more sympathetic to him. Hating Toby was such a wide-spanning meme throughout the show's history that fans in turn abandoned their own humanity and forgot that he's just a poor guy trying to find happiness while facing off against consistent workplace abuse. Assuming he actually isn't the real Scranton Strangler, of course. Ugh. And that's our list. Know of any other TV characters that didn't deserve the hate? Let us know all about them in the comment section right down below, and do not forget to like, share, and click on that subscribe button while you're at it. Also, if you like this kind of thing, then head on over to whatculture.com and find some more fantastic articles just like the one this video you're watching right this second is based on. I've been Gareth from whatculture.com. Thank you as always for watching this lovely video today. Hopefully I'll see your faces very, very soon, but in the meantime, hey, be good to yourself. Bye bye.